never changes.
War has changed.
A few years before his death, Albert Einstein told an interviewer that, "I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." Einstein was speaking to a new and distinctly modern anxiety that defined the second half of the 20th century. With the creation of the atomic bomb, war had changed. The rapid pace of technological advancement meant that Armageddon would now be hanging over humanity's head forever. And for the past 70 years, some of the best works of Western science fiction have all grappled with this anxiety. These stories tell us that a world dominated by futuristic warfare might be visually compelling, but it is not a world worth living in. Some of the most vivid portrayals of this uniquely modern fear come from the only country to ever be on the receiving end of atomic weaponry, Japan. The Land of the Rising Sun has given us many powerful stories that explore the notion of atomic power gone awry, the violent intersection of man and machine, and what war might look like in the far future. Yes, giant robot anime, also known as mecha, where introverted teens pilot titanic war machines and grapple with the existential dread of battle. As one of the most enduringly popular genres of Japanese pop culture, it's no surprise that mecha anime has also inspired some great video games. Yet for the longest time, there was no game that simulated the feeling of actually piloting a robot ninja the size of a building. There were some fantastic RPGs, and fighting games, and even tactical shooters. But no game truly captured the spirit of being at the helm of an athletic and lightning-fast fighting machine, until the arrival of Hideo Kojima's Zone of the Enders series, which is still one of my favorite forgotten gems. The first Zone of the Enders was released by Konami for the PlayStation 2 in 2001. The experience was a revelation for mecha fans. Here was a fast-paced hack-and-slash action game putting you at the controls of the orbital frame Jehuti, a giant robot named after the Egyptian god of judgment. Players took on the role of Leo Stenbock, a timid and nervous teenager who is thrust into the role of combat pilot after a surprise attack on the space colony he calls home. If this sounds familiar, it's because this story is a self-conscious homage to many mecha anime series that followed similar plot lines. These themes are also the calling card of Metal Gear maestro Hideo Kojima, who led the production for Zone of the Enders. There's political and military intrigue, super weapons gone awry, ponderous philosophizing about the nature of humanity, and giant robots. It's a tale of galactic warfare between the wealthy Earthlings and the spacefaring Enders, who rebel against their colonial masters on Earth. And right in the middle of this conflict are the powerful orbital frames Jehuti and Anubis, who have the potential to upset the balance of power and tip the scales of the conflict. The design and development for Zone of the Enders was staffed by many of the same people who had previously worked with Kojima on titles like Snatcher, Policenauts, and Metal Gear Solid. You might even say that Zone of the Enders was one of the first Kojima Productions games, well before Koji Pro was officially established in 2005. The mechanical designs by Yoji Shinkawa in particular bear a strong resemblance to his work on the Metal Gear Solid series. But the first Zoe game was ultimately something of a mixed bag, and far from perfect. The fast-paced combat was fun and engaging, but quickly became repetitive, with little in the way of mission variety. The robots themselves were high detail and exquisitely modeled, especially considering the PS2's limited hardware, but the environments and background objects were crude at best. And the voice acting and localization were not great.
Now, what will you do? Will you escape all by yourself? Or will you punch me out to save your friends?
Europeans and North Americans might even be more familiar with the bonus extra that was included in their version of the first Zoe, rather than the game itself, a demo of Metal Gear Solid 2. Yeah, MGS2 was so hotly anticipated at the time, it became something of a running joke that no one who bought the first Zone of the Enders actually played it because they were only interested in the demo. The first Zone of the Enders was a moderate success, but no one really expected to see a sequel. Director Noriaki Okamura even told IGN at the time there were no plans to release another game, but then Konami and Kojima surprised everyone with the announcement of a sequel less than a year before its release. Zone of the Enders: The Second Runner, or Anubis Zone of the Enders in Japan. Zoe 2 came out in early 2003, and it became this ultimate rarity in media, a sequel that is as good as, or even better than, the original work. It was conceived as a whole new approach to the format of the first game, so Kojima tapped a new director for the sequel, Shuyo Murata, one of the main writers of Metal Gear Solid 2. It's not an overstatement to say that Zone of the Enders 2 is an improvement over the original in every way. The graphics pushed the PS2 to the limits of its computational power. The gameplay was expanded to offer more tactical options, enemy types, and mission variety. The entire 3D camera system was revamped, and the musical arrangements are vastly more complex and dynamic, layering in and removing instrumentation as the battle escalates and subsides.
I will make vernier control semi-automatic.
The presentation is top-notch, even when compared to other titles from that era that ran on superior hardware. Instead of going for realism with standard polygonal graphics, the designers of Zoe 2 opted for a semi-cel-shaded look, giving the game a distinctly anime aesthetic that makes the over-the-top action feel all the more engaging. This cel shading is combined with a dazzling number of particle effects, an impressive performance for the humble PS2. It gives battles a kinetic and almost kaleidoscopic feel, a larger-than-life experience that leaps out from the TV screen. The first game's CGI cutscenes were similarly replaced with animated sequences that look like they're straight out of an early 2000s mecha anime. The game's reworked combat and camera systems allow for far more dynamic gameplay. Where the previous game only allowed for one-on-one battles, Zoe 2 sees the player taking on dozens of foes at once in a series of set-piece brawls across the surface of Mars. This new game engine allows for some memorable encounters and boss fights, each of them worthy on their own of being the game's highlight moment.
Enemy fleet, 5 in total.
They're trying to attack the Levs on the ground.
Each set-piece battle builds on the last, from a fight atop a speeding bullet train to a showdown with an armada of battle cruisers,
Watch out for the battleship's main cannon.
to a clash with an epic war machine the size of a small moon. One of the climactic moments of the game sees Jehudi leading an army of mechs in an all-out assault on an enemy base, all rendered in real time. The game also gives you a hefty arsenal to face down these obstacles. In addition to standard melee, shooting, grappling, and dashing attacks, Jehudi also collects an army of sub-weapons that greatly expand the tactical options available to the player. And as you master Jehudi's arsenal, you also become more and more powerful through the game's RPG-like progression system. Though at first, it seems like you have an overwhelming number of options at your disposal, switching between Jehudi's abilities and sub-weapons quickly becomes second nature. And as you become accustomed to the controls, you actually begin to feel like a badass mecha pilot. In Zoe 2, the player takes on the role of Dingo Egret, a hot-tempered mining pilot who harbors dark secrets from his past. After discovering Jehudi hidden away beneath the permafrost of Callisto while on a mining expedition, he's thrust into the middle of the Martian war for independence and becomes the only thing standing between the galaxy and certain destruction. By the end of the game, you truly feel as though you've progressed from greenhorn to ace pilot, just like the protagonist of your favorite mecha anime. There's a much greater emphasis on storytelling compared to the first game, with plenty of cutscenes and dialogue sequences of talking heads that provide exposition on the game's plot and lore.
Indeed, I can't believe that you've managed to survive till now.
Indeed, Zoe 2 borrows heavily from the themes of the mecha anime that inspired it, especially how it simultaneously romanticizes and critiques warfare, and ultimately advocates for pacifism. There's also the familiar anime trope that super-powered mechs are beyond the reckoning of normal humans, that piloting one is a Faustian bargain that will ultimately shatter your body and mind. There is no expansive open world here boasting endless hours of content. It's a linear and self-contained story that progresses from one scripted encounter to the next, continuously raising the stakes as the journey continues. And as good as it is, Zone of the Enders 2 also isn't a perfect game. Some boss fights and encounters can be quite tedious, requiring trial and error to figure out the solution. And like in the original, the dubbing is so bad that you'll wonder if it wasn't done on purpose.
You don't understand.
You can't deceive me with beautiful words like freedom and independence anymore!
Maybe in order to accurately represent the average translation quality for most mecha anime.
I'll kill you.
It is also a relatively short game. Most players will make it through in a little more than 6 hours, or about the same length as a 13-episode OVA of a mecha anime. That may feel a bit skimpy by modern standards, but there is something refreshing about playing a game that is confident in what it wants to do, tells the story it has to tell, and leaves it at that. It should be easy enough to find a cheap used copy of the original PlayStation 2 version of the game, but if you have the opportunity, you should opt for the PS3 or Xbox 360 HD remaster. It includes both Zoe games with an updated 1080p resolution, a silky smooth 60 FPS, and vastly improved textures. Be warned though, the Xbox version is known to have some serious performance issues. There's also going to be a VR-capable re-release of the second runner coming to PS4 and PC in early 2018, so there are plenty of ways to enjoy this classic slice of high-speed robot action. Despite running on the weakest console of its generation, Zone of the Enders 2 is one of the best-looking and most slickly presented games of its era. Nothing like it had been seen in gaming before, and in the 14 years since its release, few games have even come close to matching the sheer spectacle of Zone of the Enders 2. If you're at all a fan of mecha anime, this is a must-play game. But is it the perfect giant robot experience? Well,
that depends on the skill of the runner.
Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little excursion into video game Oblivion. As always, if you're thinking of a game that you believe deserves to be covered as a forgotten gem, feel free to give me your suggestion in the comments section and simply add #GemSuggestion. If you enjoy this series and the videos on my channel in general, please consider supporting my work with $1 or $2 on Patreon. It is the backbone that keeps this channel going. And this month, my special thanks goes out to John Boring, Marcel Moccasin, Cory Laflamme, Quentin Prudhomme, James Lynch, Lucas, Thwagam, Wayne Russell, Jackson Brazil, Tony Flesher, Travis Deng, Evan Tekre, Kiris Dachaku, Adam Burr, Garrett Lathy, Vida Daly, Ian Oblivion, Nick Lazelle, Malum, Christopher Nuragat, Matt Davis, Julia, David Nadeau, The Melting Squad, Simon Tjomsland, Sean Quigley, Sean Holiday, Arngrim, Roman Vasenmüller, Nathan DeGrand, Alex Lake, Carlos Spilari, Siri Ignath Eliasson, Agustin Ortega, Brand Rupert, Morrigan, Maxwell Brown, Subject Matter Games, Max Herbert, Nolani Telemoni, Broseph Jones, David Zelenak, Karl Jura, Martin Schmidt, Konrad Kurze, Austin Berry, Brian Vieira, Adam Cross, Matthew Daly, Sonny Mellard, Murat Casardas, Michael Spina IV, Travis Leneve, Struggler, Jordan Farrell, Dennis Pfefferkorn, Mr. Bergadon, Matthias Fowler, Decim, Rational User, Philip Kirchner, Midorino, Chase Ladner, Pascal Fähling, Milan Vujnovic, Yasin Inat, Andrei Kriakushin, Sebastian Garcia, Jacob Woodward, Dmitry Pirag, Luke Johnson, Denis Sendel, Thiago Pereira dos Santos Silva, Carlos Vega, Marisa Martinez, Michelle Stoliker, Christopher Collish, Nicholas Stevenson, and Ronnie Meinert. Until next time, ta-ta for now.